drinking had been it was an everyday life for me. And so I started losing things. I'd never, I'd never really cared about anything but drinking, you know. And when you live a life like that, you eventually start losing things. And you love your children, you love your wife, and you know when those start going away, it still don't matter because alcohol or my selfish, what I wanted, what I needed was more important than what they needed or cared for. And so it was on a Easter. Uh, Kathy left me, and she told me it's time for me to get out. And I rebelled hardly, and or very hard, and it only drove me in deeper. And self pity and my ego couldn't handle where my life was heading at that time. Uh, but it was always all about me. It never was about them. It was never, what am I doing to my children? What am I doing to my wife? What am I doing to my mother, who just passed? And it was just all about my selfish feelings. And when she said it was time for me to go, um, I couldn't handle that. And so I drank harder and longer and faster until Father's Day of that same year in 2003. And so that Father's Day, I woke up and I decided to end my life. Um, so I set in to have a big party with everybody that I knew, and I I drank hard that day, a lot of drugs, and I kind of called everybody on the way out, uh, and I didn't tell them I was doing anything, and a lot of times people say I'm fixing to kill myself or whatever. A lot of times that don't seem to be true. It's the ones that are quiet that are serious about it. And I was done. I just called everybody, told them I loved them, and this. I came here and I told. I can't remember if it was before or after I tried it. That gets a little bit sketchy for me, but I went to a place, and it was the darkest place I'd ever been. And I couldn't take you there today, but it was so dark. And I put a gun in my head and pulled the trigger. And God saved my life. And my first thought wasn't, thank you, God, for saving my life. My first thought was, I can't even do this right. And I felt like a failure. And then my next thought was, God, please help me. And I don't know why I called a friend of mine and I told him I needed help. And he said, where are you? I said, I don't know. And so I just started driving. And I started driving down, and this is where God started taking over for me. I drove an hour at least down the trace. And in 2003, when a cell phone doesn't lose its signal going down the trace, that's God taking charge. And all of this is in hindsight, of course, because I'm still mad that I couldn't finish what I started. And so I go on, and the next day, I make it through that day. I drank my last beer that night at 1:58 in the morning. And my reason I didn't drink all of them was because I was going to tell everybody that, look, I'm not alcoholic. A real alcoholic would not throw their last beer away. And so I threw it away, and the next morning, that same friend that got me home, he had called behavioral health for me. And I got into counseling and got into detox. And the most amazing thing happened. Everything started lining up, and as I look back, it's only things that God could have done. There was a doctor there, his name was Anathan Hines. And for the first time in my life, he asked me what I was using, what I was doing. And up until that point, I was only drinking a couple. And no matter what time of day, it was always a couple. And I told him everything I was doing. And I couldn't believe that I did that. And he said, I'm glad you're honest. He said, because I was fixing to call you a liar, because most alcoholics do lie about how much they're drinking. He said, but since you told me the truth, you might have a shot at this thing. And he said, you got to remember, the most important thing of staying sober is not lying. Because if you're going to lie, you got to lie to yourself before you lie to anybody else. And that began my journey. A lot of great counselors, a lot of great people were put in my life to guide me. And, a lot of it was to pay people back. I started on the deal to get Kathy back. And I went to rehab to get Kathy back. And she wouldn't visit me, and I'd get mad. And probably the biggest spiritual experience that I ever had, outside of all of that craziness that I just told you about, was I was at rehab, and she was going to Florida, and it's poor me. She gets to go to Florida. I'm stuck here in rehab. I can't go nowhere. And it was 2 o'clock that was a Saturday night that she left. It was 2 o'clock on Sunday morning. And God woke me up and he said, son, I love you, and I know how many hairs are at your head. And from that point on, I knew I wasn't alone. No matter if Kathy came back, no matter if my children didn't love me no more, I knew that if I stayed in God's love, then everything was going to be okay. And I don't even know why. I don't know why I trusted him, but I did. And I followed everything they said. If they'd have told me to run 50 miles, I'd have run 50 miles. I was just willing to do whatever it took to find my father. And in finding my father, it gave me everything. You can't, the things that God's love has given me is something you can't buy. It's all the priceless things. My son's never seen me drink. My grandkids have never seen me drink. They've seen me act a fool. But they haven't never seen me out of control and totally not to myself. And God gave me my wife back 7 years after. My daughters are, they're 32 and 33, and we're close. I had none of that. And also the last day I drank was on Father's Day. And it's just the way God wrote it was perfect. It was just perfect.